the MCAT CARS podcast, session number 47. The CARS section of the MCAT gives thousands of pre-meds nightmares every night. Whether you're an ESL student, lack confidence while reading, or a slow reader like me, Jack Westin and the medical school headquarters are here to help you score higher in every section so you can be confident you're ready to get the MCAT score of your dreams. Welcome to another episode of the MCAT CARS podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your host here every week. As always, I am joined by the one and only Jack Westin from jackwestin.com. If you are looking for some more MCAT CARS prep, which ultimately helps with every section of the MCAT, go to jackwestin.com. Check out his free resources, his course that you can sign up for, his in-depth course that will help you improve your CARS score. Let him know that you heard about him here on the MCAT CARS podcast from Dr. Ryan Gray, and you will not be disappointed. I hope you enjoy today's episode, diving into another passage to help you understand how to break down these passages, these paragraphs, these sentences to maximize your MCAT CARS score. Jack Westin back for some more MCAT CARS podcast. How are you on this wonderful day?
Oh, it's great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I have been Googling Ben Tillman from our last podcast, and I think we were right. Not a great guy. So remind me not to invite him over for dinner.
Yeah, well, I don't know if, I mean, he's been gone for a while now, but I'm sure there are people just like him around. But, it just shows you how people have differing views, right? The author had a very, very opinionated view, which we mostly probably agree with. But back in the day, Tillman and other people like him do not agree with this author, right? Or that author. So,
yep.
Everyone's different. And I think the best way to kind of improve our ability to understand these passages are just be willing to accept anything that comes your way and don't take it personal, right? Try to understand.
That's a good point, right? If you're an African American student reading this, all right, or maybe a Jewish student reading about the Holocaust or something, you can't get emotional. You just got to read it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's very tough to do, especially when you connect with the author or do not connect with the author. But when you answer these questions, you must go with whatever the author says.
Yeah. All right. What's in store for us today?
Okay, so this passage is pretty straightforward. It's going to be interesting. It's about populations and numbers. So if you're a math student, you're going to probably like this passage.
All right. If you want to follow along, follow in the show notes or in your podcast app of choice by tapping or swiping on that artwork. Paragraph 1, the late statistics wizard Hans Rosling, who died in February of 2017 at age 68, brought at least 10 toilet paper rolls to some of his beloved presentations. Okay, so we're given a name, a statistics wizard, so somebody good at math, I'm assuming, or statistics at least, and toilet paper. 10 toilet paper rolls. Okay, that's pretty funny. So now I'm interested in reading, and hopefully I'll have fun with the passage.
What if you didn't like the first sentence? You should still try to find interest in whatever you're reading. Right?
Exactly.
But you can't deny it, right? If you find it intriguing, you're going to probably find it easier to read.
Maybe the guy had like some irritable bowel or something. He had to have lots of toilet paper ready to roll.
Okay.
All right.
I just think of a professor, right, or mathematician doing that.
Yeah. He would stack them into a tower on a table, each roll representing 1 billion people. All right, so now we know what they're used for. In a 2012 talk at the Skoll World Forum, he used the rolls to show how, as the number of children in the world, 2 billion, holds steady, the global population will rise from 7 billion to the also indefinitely stable figure of about 10 billion. So, just the discussion of population and children at 2 billion and our total 10 billion, which is why he had 10 paper rolls, toilet paper rolls. We are debating peak oil, he remarked. but we know that we have reached peak child. All right. So interesting. So peak oil, I have no idea what that means with the whole population and toilet paper rolls. But he is saying in this talk, we have reached peak child, which I'm assuming means that we've kind of reached our population limits.
Yeah. So it's a comparison because most people usually think about peak oil, right? We don't have enough oil. We're going to run out of oil. Let's go into solar, etc. But the author's saying, or at least this is what Rosling is saying, is that, we should be talking about how there's an overpopulation. We have too many children or too many people.
Yeah. Okay. Next paragraph. With his whimsical props and other colorful visualizations, Rosling was renowned as a translator between large, almost unfathomable numbers and the language of everyday experience. So the author here is saying that Rosling was a good communicator, it sounded like, taking hard things to understand and making it easy to understand.
Yeah, good.
He understood that most of us need visualizations or analogies to mentally work with millions, billions, and other big powers of 10 that help define our world. So just, again, explaining why the visualizations or analogies help. It's just hard for us to think that big.
Yeah. So what was the toilet paper stuff about? Was it because he really needed it?
No, it just helped us visualize those big numbers.
There you go. Now we make sense out of all of it, right?
Yeah.
So don't be alarmed if you read about toilet papers and you have no idea where it's going, because maybe the next paragraph will clear it up.
Yep. They're important for decisions that affect daily life, such as how money gets invested and which government policies you support. So that one, I'm confused. So they are, which one is he saying? The visualizations or just the big numbers?
It's most likely the big numbers.
Yeah.
Right. So because these numbers are used for the investment of the money, government policies, etc.
Okay.
You could think of it in terms of visualizations as well, but probably the money.
Yeah. Okay. But just how well or poorly do people understand quantities in power of 10? So the author here posting a question, like with big numbers, how well do we understand these things? And how can we better equip ourselves to navigate them? So it looks like the author is setting up a discussion about potentially how we can, as human, work with big numbers.
Yeah. And that seems to be very hard, I think, for everyone, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Next paragraph. In thinking about these questions, I started reading about a niche branch of science called numerical cognition. All right. So the author is doing a little bit of research and found this thing called numerical cognition, which maybe will give us some answers. Researchers in this field study not just how we think, but how we think about and with numbers. Interesting. All right. So that's kind of the definition of numerical cognition, how we think about and work with numbers.
Yeah. Sounds good. I'm going to chime in here and talk a little bit about Bill Gates.
Yeah.
I think Bill Gates is one of the richest people in the world, right? And he revolutionized America with his ideas and his execution. And I remember, I think I was in a podcast or an art or YouTube video or something where he said that, numbers are very important, and understanding how big a number is, right? And being able to try to perceive that is what made him so successful. So, this is, I think, important because it shows you the power of numbers and how if you understand numbers, you can probably do more with whatever you're trying to do.
Okay. Next paragraph. Not a lot of research has been done on how our minds perceive and comprehend large orders of magnitude, big differences between the size of, say, a cell or our sun. So again, just talking about the research, we don't know how to comprehend sizes of the cells and our sun. Very small things, very big things. Or
Right.
like crowds at an inauguration or something like that. But one academic outwardly passionate about it is David Landy, assistant professor of psychological and brain sciences at Indiana University in Bloomington. All right, so here's a name. We're given a guy who potentially is doing this research, and he's passionate about it. Landy has done several studies on how well people understand very large numbers, namely the millions, billions, and trillions in relation to each other on a number line. Interesting. So we're given this person who is now trying to research this, right, in a place where not a lot of research has been done.
Yeah, that's it. Sounds good. Go ahead.
Next paragraph, short answer. About half the people he studied were pretty bad with handling big numbers. So a little bit of data there. In a 2013 study, for example, Landy and colleagues did 2 experiments that involved estimating large numbers. So just setting up an experiment. The sample sizes weren't huge, so there's some uncertainty about generalizing the results, but they're a start. So potentially setting up a negative about the study, right? They weren't big. They found that about half of participants did pretty well in locating numbers on a line in relation to 1 million, 1 billion, etc. Interesting. Trying to picture what that would look like. Locating numbers in a line, on a line. Okay. So kind of what they were doing at that research. But about 35% of people in the study used what the authors call a segmented linear heuristic. All right. So I'm just going to ignore that and just not try to understand what that means and just know that they used something, that 35% of the people used something to help them potentially.
Okay.
That means they correctly distinguish between numbers within the millions or billions, but assume that million, billion, and trillion are equally spaced on a number line. All right, so that's defining the segmented linear heuristic. They were generally great at comparing the relative sizes of numbers like 2 million at 800 million, but many treated 980 million and 2 billion as nearly identical. Okay. I would like to have either of those amounts of money in my bank account. So they're nearly identical to me. Interesting. So I'm trying to picture, and I don't know if that's good, right? We talk a lot about thinking about and using active learning. But when you start to I'm trying to figure out this study and what it looked like and what they were doing, I think I'm just going down a rabbit hole that's not going to help me.
Right. I mean, all you got to know is that it's all relative, right? It's the relativity that affects them. So they know the difference between 2 million and 800 million. I mean, those are both within the same kind of range in the millions. Mm-hmm. But then they don't really see the difference between 980 million and 2 billion. Yeah. That's double, right? Like that's more than double. So so again, you don't need to know the exact details, but you should just know that they're bad with numbers, big numbers specifically, right? Especially billions, I guess.
Yeah.
So what's the big point of this passage? Like, what should you know? What is the author trying to convey? What is the author wanting you to know about us, about people?
That we're not good with big numbers.
And anything else?
Going back maybe to that segmented linear heuristic, like we need tricks to kind of work with them.
Exactly. We need props, right? Which is what Rosling was doing, right? So something along the
visualizations.
Visualizations. Yeah, we need these visualizations. So in this case, this mathematician or statistician is not weird after all, right? So he's doing the right thing by bringing toilet paper to class.
Yeah.
Okay.
It reminds me of like infographics, right? You have 100 little tiny bodies. It's like each person equals 1,000 people, and just kind of helps you understand and puts it in perspective.
Yes.
All right. So there you have it. It's another great episode of the CARS podcast. I hope this helped you improve your ability to do well on the MCAT CARS section. Don't forget to go check out jackwestin.com and check out his free daily passages. Again, jackwestin.com. Have a great week. We'll see you next time here on the MCAT CARS podcast.
This is MedEd Media.